So one of these we would do is go into a couple cases that we have done in the past. And the first one that we're going to show you is about a van operator parks his van underneath some high voltage wires knowingly and raises his antenna 40 feet into the overhead wires, electrocuting his colleague inside. Operator claims that she looked for dangerous conditions at 2 points during the antenna's ascent and saw no danger. Plaintiff is an employee who was injured, defendants of the van operator of the parent company. The biggest challenge here was, did the operator of the van, were they trained properly? Or was this simply just somebody who wasn't doing what they were trained? That was the big question. The parent company wishes to recreate the view of the van operator to determine what she could have seen if she looked. Put the jury, put everybody in the same position. Traditional recon would be impossible due to the dangerous nature of the power lines. Obviously, nobody can touch the power lines or get close to them. Experts cannot get the data they need to reconstruct the accident, and that is where computer animation and laser scan come in. Okay, so as you can hear, that 911 was called. The person inside the van was badly injured when she attempted, out of fear, to step out of the vehicle. When then she became the ground and got injured. So here is, what was the reason why? Was it bad training, which would obviously make the parent company at fault, or was it proper training and simply an employee who wasn't doing what they were trained? So to recreate this situation, we obviously had to have an accurate model of the scene, the actual van. The actual van, as you saw there, became toast after being electrocuted and no longer functional. So we got an exemplar van. One of the challenges was to make sure the exemplar van was actually exemplar. Then finally, once we have all this, place the 3D van into the scene and then do a final check, raise the antenna to the proper height and wire strike to see what we have. So as we start, we went out there and we laser scanned the scene. As you can see, laser scanning picks up telephone wires, power electric lines just fine without having to touch them. We then laser scan the van. Now this image is a little misleading in that we actually laser scan this van in a separate location. This is the exemplar van scanned at a separate location, but this is what happens when we put the two scans together. So here we have a photograph of the scene. Here we have the laser scan of the scene. Here we have the scene itself in 3D. As you can see, the end result is a very accurate 3D model of the scene. Here we have our exemplar van, laser scanned to get exact dimension. Here is the exemplar van dimensions up close from the laser scan data, and from that we make a 3D model of the van. Once again, this gives us a very accurate 3D model to work with. That is the burned area of the antenna. As you can see, from your human eye, it looks completely pitch black, charred. But when you actually look at it from the laser scan perspective, you can see there's actually a pattern in there. And if you look in the upper left-hand corner, you can see there's an indentation. That little indentation is actually where the wire struck, because that is where it was hottest, and it actually melted. And the laser scan picks up that. So this is the only photograph that we have of the scene. And so using laser-based photogrammetry, we can then use this photograph to place our 3D model in the scene. Now, as you look at this, one of the biggest challenges is it's parked on a slope, and so the van is tilted. The passenger side of the van is higher than the driver's side of the van. And if you go directly straight up, you'll see there's no wires directly above this van. And one of the issues was that the van operator was poorly trained because they weren't trained to understand how a slope would affect that the antenna would go up at an angle, and that's poor training. So here is our 3D model all put together. So one of the things to recreate this scene is to take the exemplar van and go out there and raise its antenna. But we can't raise it on a flat ground because that's not what happened. So what we have to do is we have to recreate the ground somewhere else. So as you see here, by getting the measurements and the exact locations of the 4 wheels, we can recreate the height elevation for the 4 wheels, one wheel being on the ground, and then raise the other 3 in relationship to that. When we do that, as we'll see in this image, we have the van, we raise it, and you can see there's actually a little bit of a bend in the antenna. It doesn't go up straight, it goes at an angle, but gravity is bending it just a little bit. So our 3D model has that as well. We are allowed to then model the same exact bend in place. So once we take the van, scan it, the scene, scan it, the power line, scan it, create an accurate model, put everything back where it is, the end result is, sure enough, all the data lines up with the wire. Now, the interesting thing about this case, nobody was quite sure which wire was struck. There's a lot of wires up there. But by recreating this using laser scan and photogrammetry, we could actually tell them exactly which wire was hit. And sure enough, it lines up perfectly with that wire, kind of giving us our acid test, showing us that we have visually accurately recreated. This is from a different view. And as you can see, it hits almost exactly where we expect it to see. So after creating all this, putting this all together, we can now put the jury in the eye of the operator and see what they show. And as I said, one side was claiming, look, if you look straight up, it is clear, but it goes up at an angle, and you don't train your operators to look over and understand that it's not going to go up straight, and that if they looked over to the other side, they would have been known to see the danger. But you didn't train them properly, and that's your fault. Well, this is what it looks like as you go up and put the antenna up. Now, we sped this up. It actually goes up. It takes about 2 minutes to have actually the thing go up that fast, but we sped this up for this exhibit. As you can clearly see, if anybody looked up at all, as she claims she did, she would have seen these wires. This idea that the wires are off to the side, that you need to understand, the complex of going up at an angle, and that's bad training. Here, the antenna operator should not have deployed the antenna, and it was always that this was not training, that this was simply an employee who didn't follow their training.